Hey, welcome. Today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to unlock an ancient prayer, Psalm 5, by turning it into a visual story you won't forget. We're going to go verse by verse, creating these really memorable images to bring this powerful text to life. Ready? Let's jump right in. Think about it. What's the very first thought that pops into your head when you wake up? Is it the blare of your alarm, that massive to-do list, or maybe just a groan? Well, this psalm starts right there, in that very first moment you're awake. But it frames it as a direct line to God. It's a pretty powerful way to start the day, and it's exactly where our story begins.
All right, so our journey kicks off with King David in the quiet moments of dawn. And this isn't some big public announcement from a king on his throne. No, this is personal. It's an intimate, quiet appeal to God that really sets the tone for everything else.
So, verse 1. This sets a scene of real, quiet intensity. I want you to picture this. David isn't yelling from a mountaintop. He's leaning in, close, almost like he's sharing a secret, whispering his deepest thoughts, his meditations, right into the ear of a king who is listening. Imagine a powerful monarch leaning down, totally focused, catching every single word. That right there, that's our opening shot.
Okay, now watch this because the tone shifts fast. In verse 2, that quiet whisper suddenly becomes a cry. The camera pulls back and we see David no longer whispering. Now he's looking up, hands outstretched toward a massive, brilliant throne. The plea is now out loud. It's urgent. He's not just thinking these things anymore. He's crying out for help to his king and his God.
Verse 3 is where we get the action. The sun is just starting to break the horizon, sending out those first long golden rays. And get this visual. David is now an archer. He literally takes his prayer, places it on a bowstring as if it's an arrow, and he carefully aims it straight up into that new morning sky. It's this deliberate act of sending it off, and then he waits. He looks up, full of expectation, waiting for a response.
Okay, so the arrow is in the air, now the scene completely shifts. And to really get why that prayer was so urgent, we have to understand the battlefield he's standing on. The next few verses lay out this huge contrast, this clash between two opposing forces, the absolute goodness of God versus the nature of evil.
So verse 4, it draws this incredibly clear line in the sand. For you are not a God who takes pleasure in wickedness, and evil shall not dwell with you. It's all about defining the very character of the God he's praying to. The image here is just pure, brilliant light. We're talking so bright that no shadow, not even a tiny speck of darkness can get anywhere near it. It's a place of total, absolute purity.
Now, verse 5 brings some characters onto the stage, the boastful and the workers of iniquity. You know, those who do evil. And just try to picture them strutting around trying to get into that brilliant light. But they can't. It's like they're physically pushed back. They literally cannot stand in its presence. Why? Because they are completely, fundamentally incompatible with it.
And verse 6 really finishes this stark contrast. So first, you have someone speaking lies, and their words are just like smoke. They just dissolve and vanish in front of that pure light. And then you've got this deceitful person wearing one of those two-faced masks, and they're just completely rejected. The point couldn't be clearer. Lies and deception have absolutely no place here.
All right, so the lines have been drawn. The two sides are crystal clear. And that brings us to a huge turning point. In these next two verses, David makes his choice. He declares where he stands and then makes a really important request. It's all about which path you're going to choose.
Verse 7 is that moment of choice. David says it right out, but as for me, it's a declaration. I want you to see him literally turn his back on all those shadows we just talked about. He starts walking confidently, not in terror, but in this deep, reverent awe, toward a massive temple that's just bathed in that same warm light. And he's able to walk in, not because he's perfect, but because of what the verse calls God's multitude of mercy.
Then in verse 8, he makes his request. Lead me, O Lord, make your way straight before my face. So imagine David standing at the edge of this dark, tangled forest, and you know his enemies are lurking in there. His prayer is basically asking for a guide to show up, and with just one move, make that twisted, chaotic path perfectly straight and light it up. He's asking for a clear, safe way forward.
So, he just mentioned his enemies, right? Well, now the camera zooms right in on them. We get a really detailed look at the kind of threat they pose. And this isn't about swords or spears. No, this is about something way more sneaky.
Verse 9 gives us this incredible breakdown, like an anatomy lesson, of their real weapons, deception. Okay, let's go through this. First, their mouths. Picture their words, so full of lies that they just turn to dust right as they're spoken. Next, their hearts. Inside their chests, it's just a swirling vortex of destruction. Then their throats. You look down their throat and it's like a dark, open grave, chilling. And finally, their tongue, used for flattery. It looks smooth, but it glints like a sharp, hidden blade.
So what do you even do against enemies like that? How does David pray? Well, verse 10 is a powerful call for justice. Imagine these enemies meticulously building their schemes, like a complex house of cards. David's prayer is that their own advice, their own clever plans, will be the exact thing that makes the whole structure collapse on top of them. He's essentially asking for their rebellion to cause its own destruction.
Whew. After that intense close-up on the enemy, our story builds to its incredible climax in these last 2 verses. And the final scene isn't a battle. It's a scene of complete safety and just overwhelming joy. This is the payoff.
Verse 11 pulls the camera back, widening the shot, and now we see everyone who trusts in God. And they're not hiding in fear. They are safe inside this massive fortress. And get this, they're celebrating. They're shouting for joy because they know they're defended. Their trust has turned into pure, uncontainable joy.
And that brings us to the final, powerful image of this whole psalm in verse 12. The camera zooms in on one single person, someone who is righteous, just standing calmly in a field. And then, this huge, shimmering shield made of pure light, a shield of God's favor, just appears out of nowhere and completely surrounds them. See, this isn't a shield they have to hold up themselves. It's a divine protection that surrounds them. That's their ultimate security.
And just like that, we end right back where we started. This whole journey, from the quiet whisper to the cry for help, from choosing a path to being protected by that divine shield, it all started with that one single intentional word in the morning, which kind of leaves us with one last question to think about. In all the noise and chaos of your day, who gets your first word?